At this time, I'd like to open up our special joint city-county meeting for Tuesday, August 21st, and 2012. And we are starting without the chair, but I wanted to see if there was consensus on moving up item number 9 right after the Pledge of Allegiance, so that the doctors don't have to stay here all night.
I would agree with that.
Is that all right with everyone? Okay. So they had enough of that at our council meeting.
Well, I'm minor, so I guess I'll
Okay.
open it for the
Okay.
Board of Supervisors.
Put the mic
Board
on.
of Supervisors, oops, sorry. The Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte and the governing body of all other special assessment and taxing districts for which said board so acts is now meeting in special session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at the assigned time. All items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. Oh, never mind. How come we have the pledge after public comment?
This is your agenda, I don't know.
We can do the pledge first.
We can do the pledge first.
I think it's appropriate.
Okay, and we'll call the roll when Supervisor Sullivan, Chair Sullivan gets here. Okay?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So at this time, we'll open up the public comment period, and any member of the audience is invited to address the City Council or the County Board of Supervisors on any matter that's within our jurisdiction, public interest or matters appearing on the agenda. They are accepted. Your time is limited to 3 minutes, and you may speak after you get acknowledgement from Vice Chair McNeighbor and myself. Is there any public comment? Mr. Longsdale?
Madam Mayor, members of the board and council, my name is Bill Lonsdale, and I live in Crescent City. And I'm going to apologize in advance to Mayor Pro Tem Ania because I'm bringing up an issue that he has given me advice on in his own good-natured but firm way in the past. However, I feel this is an appropriate forum for it. The issue is the inability of residents of the county to vote on issues affecting our water. Now, I live 500 meters outside the city limits. I pay for the water, I drink the water, and I have nothing to say about what goes into it or what comes out of it. And it seems to me that that's not quite equitable. And I realize that the history of this is a long one, and that the city right now has the absolute right to control what happens to the water. But I do think in a joint body like this, where we're talking about more cooperation and more coordination, that at some future time it may be worthwhile to take up the issue and see what can be done to avoid future disenfranchisement of those of us in the county, because I feel that the issue that is on the ballot is not going to go away one way or the other, and it'll be back again. This is the second time. So I would appreciate it if your respective bodies would consider meeting jointly on this at some time in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I can address that just quickly. The council has, we are not allowed to discuss the matter. It's up to the voters now, so the council itself cannot talk about it, so we can't talk about it in a joint meeting. So the Board of Supervisors could talk about it at their separate meeting if they so desire.
Well, and we'd love to weigh in and say we're right on your side. Thanks, Bill.
Even though we're not supposed to say anything today.
And I don't think that we're not allowed to speak about it. It's just that we've tabled the topic and chosen to wait for the voters to speak.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment, and we'll table the roll until Mr. Sullivan gets here still. So with that, I would like to start with item number 9, the discussion of the hospital regionalization, and receive a presentation from Dr. Greg Duncan regarding potential impacts of regionalization. And we have Drs. Caldwell and Dr. Davis with him as well.
And Madam Chair, Mr. Hawley said it's great that we don't make them wait as long as they don't make him wait next time he has a visit.
It wasn't exactly that.
Good, good one, Rick. Yeah.
Try getting an appointment now.
Catherine. We've never waited to call the roll when somebody's this late.
Fair enough.
Just do a silent roll.
I have two letters which will supplement the brief presentation which I have, and I will hand those over to the two bodies that we're speaking before tonight. And thank you, first of all, for this opportunity. You don't know how much it means to have the support of our elected officials in a matter which is of great concern to all of the physicians in this county. So I will be reading a prepared statement, and at the end, if you have questions or during the statement, please feel free to interrupt and let me know. As we all work to protect access to care at our local hospital, I would like to present examples of why I personally believe we need to engage other companies to manage our hospital. These examples are only two of more than 20 specific documented statements made by Sutter Health executives which are inaccurate. As you know, our local hospital board voted last November to transfer ownership of Sutter Coast Hospital into Sutter Health's West Bay region. The only board member dissenting from that decision was our elected chief of staff, Dr. Kevin Caldwell. The remaining board members, all of whom are either direct employees of Sutter Health or appointed by Sutter Health, voted in favor of regionalization. Since Sutter executives continue to claim that I am not permitted to release the minutes of the meeting during which the regionalization vote took place, I will paraphrase the content. The content is the following. A major concern was brought up by the board, the concern that local medical staff input and decision-making would be diminished if the change of ownership took place. The Sutter Regional Vice President responded that regionalization would not alter the local medical staff structure and that the Chief of Staff would be a member on the Regional Credentialing Committee. That information is incorrect. After the Regional Vice President finished speaking, the 9-1 vote to regionalize took place. The statement that regionalization would not change local control of medical staff decision-making was repeated on other occasions by the regional president, the regional chief medical officer, and the CEO of Sutter Coast Hospital. In fact, during a presentation before this Board of Supervisors on February 28, 2012, Eugene Souksy stated the following, and now I will be quoting directly from the meeting, quote, "Decisions regarding the affiliate's medical staff, including medical staff privileging, will remain at the affiliate level." Another example of inaccurate information occurred when Mr. Sullivan requested guaranteed representation on the regional board. Mr. Souksy responded, again I'll quote, "No affiliate is given any particular guarantee." The problem with all of those statements made by Sutter executives is that they are not accurate. Under regionalization, local medical decision-making and governance is under the control of the regional board. Of the 11 affiliate hospitals' chiefs of staff, only one has a vote on the regional board, and even that one physician has no guarantee of a vote on the regional subcommittee which controls privileging. Mr. Souksy's statement before our Board of Supervisors about Sutter Health never guaranteeing a seat on the regional board is also inaccurate. We have since learned that the Board of Supervisors of Sonoma County requested and was given 6 guaranteed seats on the regional board in advance of their decision to regionalize Sutter Medical Center of Santa Rosa. I know that consideration of a different company to manage our hospital is a big step. But after hearing Regional President Mike Cohill tell us 3 weeks ago that implementing critical access or going broke and closing the hospital may be our only two options, I believe we must explore other options. Our community deserves a capable and trustworthy partner to manage our hospital, one which includes this community in decisions which affect our health. And I am certain that our medical staff will continue to support our local hospital no matter what course of action our community and our elected representatives decide to take. Thank you.
Just for information's sake, since this is a recorded meeting that will be put out, could you give a little brief history of the financial stability of Sutter and possibly of some of the activities that have taken on in 2011 that may have brought on this fear of going broke?
Yes, we know from all of the available public data that the 26 consecutive years that Sutter Health has been managing Sutter Coast Hospital have been profitable. We also know that multi-million-dollar intercompany cash transfers have been taking place, including 2010 and 2011, which total around $13 million. At the same time, the Sutter Coast Board of Directors was presented information that the hospital is losing money. What the Sutter Health executives fail to mention publicly is that if they even are losing money, the major reason would be their decision to outsource the billing for Sutter Coast Hospital in 2011. We now know that as a result of that decision, which was harmful to our local economy, resulted in about $7 million of losses. What is concerning is that the company that was doing the outsourced billing is owned by Sutter Health. Now, I do not know that that was an intentional failure to submit bills for $7 million worth of services, but when Sutter Health presented the information that the hospital was losing money to the media, for example, they provided a selective amount of information that didn't include the reason for the losses.
And can you explain exactly what an acute, the difference between a critical access hospital and an acute care hospital would mean to our community?
Yes, there are three main differences. The first is a critical access hospital has a cap on the available beds, which is 25. Under no circumstance may patients be admitted once that 25-bed cap is reached. We currently have 49 beds, so it would be essentially a 50% reduction in our bed capacity. The next mandate by critical access is that the average length of stay must be no more than 96 hours. In that event, if a patient comes to the hospital with a length of stay that's expected to exceed 96 hours, they would be transferred to another hospital for their care. The final main option, it's not mandated, but it's optional to have a physician on duty in the emergency room 24 hours. Under our current acute care status, we have to have an emergency room physician on duty and a general surgeon and an intensive care unit specialist available 24 hours. All three of those would disappear as mandates if we implement critical access. They would become optional.
From what I understand, the reason that critical access is so seductive to hospital managers is that reimbursement rates are at 101% of whatever the service is. So for the 25 beds, they will get 101% of their reimbursement with Medi-Cal, right?
With Medicare, that's correct. It does not stop them from billing whatever amount they can bill for private insurance, so it does not address one of our other concerns, which is the cost structure at Sutter Coast Hospital for privately insured patients. But yes, it's a cost basis reimbursement system so that no matter what the cost might be for your Medicare patients, you're guaranteed 101% of that figure. And one reason I think it is attractive to executives is that then the executive pay is guaranteed essentially because it is baked into that cost basis structure.
Since they're going to get the 101% no matter what the Medicare rate is, do you think hospitals are doing this because of the health care, the new health care laws? And by doing that, they won't lose more money that they're losing now on Medicare?
I think, well, the healthcare laws were implemented recently, and there are about 1,200 hospitals that are already critical access. I do think that it is a motivation as Medicare reimbursement tightens. I can tell you, as a acceptor of Medicare patients in my office, we have seen a steady decline for many years. We respond to that. We try to be more efficient in what we do, and as opposed to trying to limit access, but I do think that that concern is something that's motivating those executives. And again, the critical access program is not a bad program. It was designed for 12-bed hospitals to remain open in remote areas, so we don't argue with the concept of the program. It's been very helpful, but when Sutter Health became the first corporation in the nation to downsize a hospital and restrict access to care in order to qualify for the program, to me that defeats the spirit of that law.
Do you think that there are other potential people or organizations that would be interested in serving Del Norte County based on that 26-year history?
Yes, we know there are. We have been discussing this informally with some other management companies, and we know there is interest. We have a very good track record here, and as I said in my prepared comments, we would love to be able to work with a management company that we could sit across the table from and cooperate in terms of the growth of our hospital and expansion of our services, as opposed to looking at cutting it in half.
Dr. Duncan, can you explain what the next steps are?
Well, legally, the next step will occur on September 5th, when Superior Court will hear the healthcare district's legal case requesting a temporary injunction against Sutter Coast Hospital and Sutter Health. We currently have a restraining order in place which will expire on that same day, and we're hoping that it will be extended. I've met with 3 different state representatives, and they are all interested in helping us stop this potential loss of access as well, so there's a political front as well. And certainly we're trying to inform the community about what may happen here before it happens, so that the community will have a voice.
And what process do we as a community need to go through to change management companies?
The healthcare district lease agreement is the legal document that currently governs that. But more importantly than that, the local board has the authority to either transfer ownership of our hospital to the Bay Area or to seek suitors for another management company. So that really the most powerful body in terms of the direction our hospital goes is our local board of directors. They mentioned pursuing a relationship with Asante before this regionalization vote took place, but I don't think any serious discussion of that took place. That would be probably my personal favorite, because Asante runs Three Rivers Hospital in Grants Pass and Rogue Valley Medical Center, and we know a lot of the physicians at both of those places.
Thank you.
I had just a statement for the people that have any other questions about going to that few of beds. Is we've got to look at, we are a poor community. When someone has to be flown out of here, what about the families that can't make that trip over? What about those people that can't afford, when they're released from that hospital, to get back home? As we discussed earlier today, it's not a round-trip ticket on that flight. So those are, I think, just as serious issues, as some of the others. It's the people that are going to be shipped out of here that I'm really concerned about.
And we absolutely share those concerns. In fact, I spoke with the manager of our local air ambulance service, and they are very much opposed to this potential implementation of critical access, because our census swings wildly. And when we have days like we did 3 weeks ago, when 16 people would have had to have been transferred, there's simply not enough aircraft available. And aircraft are obviously very expensive capital items, and you can't have them sitting around at the airport for those days when we might have 10 or more transfers and then other days have none. So they're very worried about how they would even meet the demand.
I had another question. Out of those 25 beds, what are 3 of those beds reserved for?
Well, under critical access, generally 3 are reserved for maternity and pediatric care. So that brings you down to 22. That's how the hospitals that I've spoken with have decided to configure the program, because the nightmare scenario is if you're at the 25 and then a mother comes in labor and you have to put her on an airplane. But the other issue is, yeah, it's...
That was my point with that is, so we're going to give up our OB department, except for 3 beds.
Well, right, and the other issue is the prison. I spoke to the prison, and they're very concerned because 3 of our beds are currently security beds that were built appropriate only for prisoners but have very limited access, so they're not appropriate for the general public. And if they decide to hold those beds for prisoners, we'll be down to 19. And if they decide to give those up, when a prisoner comes in for treatment, the correctional officers will not have a secure area to monitor the prisoner. Those 3 rooms are offset from the rest of the hospital, and they have reinforced walls and windows, for example. So either way, the program does not fit at all well with our maximum security prison down the road.
Thank you.
So I believe that the county has sent a letter opposing regionalization, and the city has authorized one as well. So what would this body do as a joint meeting, and what would be helpful for us to do?
I think the more communication to the hospital board of directors is the most efficient way to make change. If the hospital board of directors, which a majority of which are locally, live here locally, decide not to pursue regionalization or critical access, it cannot happen. So if there are any means that this board might have to convince those local community representatives to reconsider their position, I think that would be extraordinarily helpful.
And what forum would you recommend? Would it be a letter?
I believe a letter to the board of directors,
Okay.
and Eugene Suksi, the CEO, could see that it's delivered at the next board meeting.
Okay. And when is that?
It's the first Thursday in September, so I believe that's the 6th. Mm-hmm.
So, thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Duncan?
No questions. Just like to thank all the doctors, especially Dr. Duncan, for all your diligence in this matter, and please know that we're here behind you, and if you need us to stand a little closer beside you, let us know, and we will be there.
Thank you very much.
Doctor, I just wanted, it was interesting what you said about Sutter Coast Hospital, not Sutter Coast Hospital, the prison. Has management out there come out for or against regionalization? You said they're concerned, but it seems like they have a lot of clout statewide.
Right. I spoke to the associate warden, and they had no idea any of this was even going on. So they were rather nervous and surprised by it. It was their impression that there are contractual agreements between the hospital and the prison that would be impacted by this critical access designation. But to my knowledge, there's been no communication between Sutter Health or Sutter Coast and the prison.
Okay, thank you.
That was one of my concerns before when we were talking about so few beds, is if we had a large riot out at that prison, they can't fly those prisoners out of here. What are they going to do if we need more than 25 beds for the prisoners? Because they can't be flown out of here. I don't know what other hospitals are secure enough to send them out of here with correctional officers.
Well, I'm sure they could be flown out, but it would cost the state of California
Millions
a lot of
over a
money to
year.
do so.
Right. I think the last major riot, I treated 10 injured inmates. And it's not just an issue of cost, although that's certainly an issue. The time that it takes to transfer somebody to another hospital that's been stabbed and is hemorrhaging, for example, is not
Right.
trivial. And it might be an inmate or a correctional officer or both.
Thank you.
And just a point, I understand that the prison has actually started to use facilities in Brookings as well, because it's less expensive than Sutter Coast Hospital.
That's correct.
You know, one more thing. I was thinking for a while, remember the swine flu and the different kinds of flu and the pandemic issues were very much being discussed, I think, at all our levels. And I didn't know if the health department has some concerns about reducing the number of beds available at the hospital in the event that we have that kind of a situation. Is that a concern, Dr. Black?
And one of the issues that's somewhat misleading is the CEO at the hospital states that our average census is 23, which is of course an average, and the actual census varies above and below the average. But the last 2 years were very light flu seasons. We had a very small number of hospitalized flu patients. Normally winter is our busiest time for that reason. So as we look at historical figures, we need to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Duncan. So is there any public comment on this matter? Dr. Caldwell or Dr. Davis, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. I guess I would mainly really like to reiterate all of the effort and the information that Dr. Duncan has been able to give to you. And I think we as physicians, and I'm sure all of our patients, I think now over 1,500 that have signed a petition against regionalization. And we really do appreciate very much the City Council and the Board of Supervisors and the county with your backing on this. I think this seems to be a no-brainer. We talk to patients and anyone in the town that's concerned about the health of our community, and no one that we can see, unless they're tied to Sutter either by salaries or by a position, are interested in doing regionalization. I do want to also reiterate that critical access, remember, is for small hospitals to increase their capacity. And I think Dr. Duncan said this, that Sutter Lakeside is the only hospital in the country that has been downsized to achieve critical access. This is something that's been utilized by the Sutter system to essentially guarantee them of income. I think those things need to be taken well into consideration when you look at the kind of Sutter partner that they've been for us. You know, I think as a medical staff, what we're looking for in a management team is someone that is willing to work with us to achieve the thing that we're all here to do. Physicians in the hospital should be on the same side of things all the time to take care of patients. That's our duty and our goal. You know, I believe that when we have a hospital system that is willing to take all the local decision-making away from us, that can at any time, without our input at all, decide that they're going to go critical access, is not someone that we want to partner with. You know, I believe that one of our last meetings, I have been in contact with the chair of the healthcare district in Marin County, who has just won a lawsuit for $21.6 million against Sutter there for their absconding monies and sending it back to Sutter Health. Jennifer Rinks is her name. She has just emailed me today. I've made initial contact with her about other potential management teams that might be interested in running our hospital. These are obviously very initial talks that we're doing, and we don't have any specifics, but I think someone, healthcare district or the Board of Supervisors and City Council combined, are the ones that really need to take the ball. We can sure supply you with the information we've got, and I'm very willing to forward that email from Dr. Ranks to this council, which however best you want me to do that. But we do have other people that I think could very well either help us get in touch with other management teams or really make good suggestions for us to look at. So I think that we do have one very good community to do healthcare in financially. Sutter has flourished here for 26 years. Or remember, these folks are into making money. They wouldn't have been here for 26 years if they couldn't. And they've done a good job of it. They make a fair amount of money. They do have an interesting process that they call excess cash transfers, which is what has allowed them to remove some of the monies due Marin General Hospital down in Marin County. So they do have ways of doing this that I believe are taking monies out of our city and county that ought to be left here for us to do healthcare. So I think there are numerous reasons that we all are interested in making sure that this does not happen, the regionalization process, so that we can get a reasonable, good partner in healthcare for us to run our hospital. And, you know, it almost pains me to hear Dr. Good Duncan go through all this process. I've just been involved with this since February or March. To me, these are just egregious acts that a system that is supposed to be a partner in healthcare in our community to take without any of our input from local citizens, city council, healthcare district, or the board of supervisors or physicians. And I think that's the extent of the comments that I have tonight. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Do you think that the what was passed to the letters sent by the Board of Supervisors and perhaps the City Council are too tame? That perhaps that, speaking for the Board of Supervisors and any other elected body that wishes to join, to actually take a formal action with a vote of no confidence for Sutter, and to ask that the local board explore other management companies to take care of our health care?
I think those are great ideas. You know, we have been attempting to talk with them, and we have just run up against a brick wall. Even though we now have had our local talks with the community and have convinced at least 1,500 people in our community, which is, again, members from more than 10% of our community, to not do regionalization, we have run up and been stonewalled by the board. The board needs, we've asked them why they think this is necessary. And we do get some comments about finances. The financial aspects of regionalization have already taken place. They already have economies of scale in the Sutter system and have been taking advantage of that locally here. So we don't really still quite understand what is going on or why. But I do believe that a letter, as you suggest, coming from the joint committee here that's seated tonight would be a great idea to the board. I mean, the board, as Dr. Duncan said this evening, can stop this dead right now with a decision to not do regionalization. They can take a revote if they have, it's 10 people on the board, right? Total. You know, if 6 people vote for it, it's over with now. And then we can go and hopefully work with them to obtain a reasonable local board that we can work with. That's all it would take. And otherwise, we're doing one heck of a lot of work in attempting to get them to realize what we think would be a good management team and to be able to work with us to no avail. And we're having to go potentially look for other suitors to manage the hospital, which, I mean, I've tried to think through this, and that is going to be a huge ordeal. We're going to have to get them to decide to be able to sell the hospital. We're going to have to get a good management team in here. We're going to have to reassemble a new local board of the hospital. You're talking about doing things from the ground up and to have everybody work through it. So, I mean, it's going to be a monumental process that could easily just be quelled by the local board saying, hey, we made a mistake, which I think they realize now. Let's take a step back. Let's go back to November. Let's think about this again. Let's take the vote. Let's say no now, and let's investigate it, which is essentially what Dr. Caldwell asked them to do in November before they took the vote. There are many questions to me personally that I don't understand what has happened or why, and I am not sure any of us have received good answers for that.
I still don't quite understand the reimbursement rate. Why would Medicare reimburse at 101% for a critical access hospital, and then we have to ship people out to other hospitals, and then that hospital is only going to get 44% reimbursement?
Well, there's many interesting things about the Medicare system, the way things are reimbursed. It always surprises me that physicians' reimbursement is at a fixed rate, and hospitals, and we get pretty much the same rate except little variations regionally across the country, whereas hospitals are able to bill phenomenally more than percentage-wise what we do, and they're able to get much higher prices. I mean, our hospital here, for some things, will get 30 to 40% more than other hospitals do,
And for some, an MRI of the knee in Rogue Valley is $1,000. Here it's $3,300. And their magnet may be quite a bit better than ours. You know, it's there are many things the way Medicare does its reimbursement is intricate. I really don't understand why the hospitals at least are not regionalized and have at least a base that they come from for the reimbursement, and then regionally varied as our physician payment. I think what it boils down to is the American Hospital Association is probably has quite a bit more money and is better at lobbying than we are.
Kelly?
I'll repeat the same thing that I said at the town hall meeting, and that is that many of the people on the local board of directors are people I respect and I've called friends in the past, and still do. And I have to believe that they didn't do their due diligence, and that they were sold a bill of goods by Sutter Health executives and didn't understand what they were getting into. I strongly encourage them to rethink that. I think that they should thank Dr. Duncan for doing their due diligence in this process. And I would make a motion for this entire board of directors to submit a letter signed by the chair and by the mayor to the local board of directors.
For clarification, you want us to have telling them that we're giving them a vote of no confidence, as David Finnegan suggested with...
I think that's up to this board,
Well-
and maybe the wording would, be worked out with the two of you and the doctors.
Perhaps Supervisor Finnegan's got a suggestion on the verbiage.
Well, having sent more than one no confidence letter in the recent past, I think the idea is there. I think the CAO and the city manager can certainly pen it. You do an eloquent job before, or the attorneys can. The bottom line is the elected officials that represent the constituents in this community are in representing the community have no confidence in the decisions made by that board of directors, and they need to know that. And we need to ask them to reverse their decision and look at their actions in light of what is best for this community and our constituents, who are their constituents.
Is that a second?
Yes,
Well-
it is.
I think we need separate motions here, though. We need, the same, but we need by both. Supervisor McClure?
Yes, I want to make sure that in this letter, I would have seconded right away, but I thought we still needed some discussion about where we want to go and what we want to have, because I think that when we give them the letter of vote of no confidence, that we also might possibly have a little room to push that we want to see the management options. We want them to examine management options and then come back and give us an analysis and let us look at the preferred alternatives based on very careful research and care, rather than, well, we don't want to do that right now. I think that we should give them direction of what we expect and possibly lay down a potential legal path that we might want to push towards, because I think that this community had a county hospital, that we had a county health care district that's now the hospital district. The hospital district can't do this right now because they're tied up in court on challenging the lease. And if they're challenging the lease and saying that Sutter is the partner that they're arguing with, then they can't go out and find another management organization. But I think that we can demand that the Sutter board actually take a look at another management operation, since we don't have confidence in their leadership.
But wouldn't it be preferable to ask him to have a vote of reconsideration and to
No, I
not
think that we
regionalize?
just roll it right down and, knock them on the head a little bit.
I would have to agree with Supervisor McClure. You can open with a paragraph of no confidence, and then the desired alternative is to invite them to not only rethink their vote, but take that next step. They need to look at alternate management plans, because otherwise, if all you do is undo what you did, people are going to go to sleep, as they historically do. And 2 years, 3 years down the road, they're going to do the same darn thing. Okay? Sutter is going to be relentless in this. So I think, Martha, you're exactly correct. I think that we need to end with, and furthermore, We need them to explore management options and report to the
And
community.
if I can make a further suggestion with that, I would give them some specific people to look at.
Like
You know,
Asante.
I mean, I've been in many committees, you know, you can send a committee off to do a certain job, and it's much better if you have some very specific things that they can go look at. And we have, I mean, this email I got today, I'd really like to get to you all, because there are phone numbers, email addresses, and people to contact that may very well be the people that we want to deal with.
I have a comment.
Amend my motion to include all of
Second.
that information.
What do you get, a second for city council on that? Because I think we need dual. Second. And on,
I have a comment
oh, yeah.
for the council. You know, when you use the word no confidence, that's a final word. The court hearing is going to be soon. The judge issues an injunction, we have lots of time. I'd like to know what alternatives are before we tell that board, we don't have any confidence in you. They may be working on stuff. And if we start off that letter with no confidence, we can't go back. It really concerns me. I mean, I didn't expect this to be at this meeting today. We haven't discussed this as a council at a public meeting at any of our council meetings. We sent a letter, but we haven't gone any further with that. And I think we're rushing to do this, and we have time to think about it, especially if the court hearing and the issue an injunction, nothing is going to happen.
We have talked about it at our public council meeting, and we had a presentation from the doctors.
We did, but we didn't talk about no confidence. We voted to send a letter that we oppose it.
Right, and it was on the agenda tonight for us to discuss as a joint city-county.
I never,
Board.
okay, I guess for me, I never expected a letter of no confidence because I certainly don't have enough knowledge, and I'd like to find out more about this. But that's just my.
Well, I am very confident that I have no confidence.
We didn't hold regular public comment on this, so we made the motion before we had that. So is there other public comment? Thank you, Dr. Davis.
Sure. And we, again, thank you all very much for your extreme concerns. That echoes ours. We really do appreciate the help because we need it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for all you're doing.
Can I ask a couple of questions of council?
Do we have any other public comment on this issue? If we could let Mr. Lonsdale, we'll come back. Mr. Lonsdale?
I didn't see any of that.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Mayor, members of the joint body, Bill Lonsdale again. I moved to Crescent City for 3 reasons. I'm retired. I have disposable income. I'm an economic benefit to the community. But the 3 reasons that brought me here were the beauty of the area, a good transit system for when I can't drive anymore, and a good hospital. Take away the good hospital, and you're not going to get very many more people like me. The other observation that I have is a political one. Several people on the dais here are being challenged in the upcoming election. And as I watch the complexities that you all are dealing with, I can't imagine how these people think that they can do a better job than you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale.
We love it when you come to our meeting.
Any other public comment on this? Okay, we'll bring it back to the council and the board.
So I have a couple of questions, council.
Yes.
Is a vote of no confidence and no return street?
I would have to say that a vote of no confidence would definitely put a wedge between you and the board of directors for the hospital. I'm not necessarily saying that it's completely no means by which to come back, but it will definitely set the line of where the sides are going to
So
be.
possibly a demand to reconsider would be
That's definitely a possibility. Yeah.
less.
With
less-
possibly
Would probably be
timeline, maybe,
less.
is the key.
Right. And of course, this would be in the assumption that the court will grant the injunction. We don't know that for sure until the hearing.
Right.
So, who knows what the court will decide to do with that. But
And then this is for both of you. As representatives of every citizen in this community, because we're a joint board, so we represent all the city residents and all the county residents, do we have any legal standing to make sure that we can keep an acute care hospital in our community that that we can define the type either through ordinance or, I get maybe through ordinance, that any hospital administration that's in this community must be acute care? Can we have that? Do we have any ability to reach there?
Or set a standard for minimum care?
I don't know that you have the ability to decide that in the manner that you're thinking of, like, can you pass an ordinance that says that the hospital must be acute care hospital? But you are, between the two of you, the general government for the entire territory of Del Norte County. And I think you have a great deal of standing to weigh in legally, legislatively, and, you know, to authorize your staff and your legal representatives to work hard and participate in a particular direction that you want this to go. I don't know that you can dictate it, but I think you can powerfully influence it.
Could we declare standing to get in on the September 5th, or do we wait and then do our own temporary restraining order to declare standing?
Well, I'll just say I don't think when you have knowledge that an issue is being brought to a critical pass in court, it's not a good idea to just sit there and wait for that one to happen and then go, well, we'll see how that comes out, and then we'll come in later and try to redo it. If you know about it and you feel like you want to participate in it, you probably should. And, you know, as far as your standing to do that, I haven't researched that. I tend to think that the council and board does have that standing to become a participant in the court proceedings. But Gretchen may have her own ideas about it.
I haven't had an opportunity to research that issue either, but I think it's definitely an option to look into to see if we can somehow intervene into that court case. And I agree with
That we do it sooner
that
than
we
later.
do it sooner rather than
And
later.
if we are able to intervene, then we would request an extension because we haven't had time to prepare any documents.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I just have a question for the mayor and Mr. Palazzo. We sent our letter. Was there ever any response from Sutter Management to our letter?
No.
Did they call?
No.
Nothing?
No, they didn't call and say they changed their mind.
Well, just call and say, thank you, we're in receipt of your letter.
No,
Nothing like that. Thank you.
I don't think
We-
they called and thank you guys.
But we could send,
Thank you for sending us that letter.
so,
And I just wanted to say, you know, if there is anybody on this board that feels uncomfortable because of a lack of knowledge, there is a lot of information out there. Dr. Duncan has about 3 inches of documentation that you could read up on. And I think it's very important that we vote as a front.
So, I would then like to suggest a friendly amendment to the motion, and that be that it be, rather than stated as a vote of a lack of confidence, that we ask that they reconsider to rescind their decision of November, but follow it up with all of the other activities, and then direct legal counsel to file with the court our position of standing.
So ask them to make that statement that we want them to rescind their decision and revote, positive, and reconsider, and to also explore alternate.
All the other stuff stays
Yeah,
in.
and then we reserve our no confidence letter for the third one if they don't do that.
So do we have a deadline
That's
that we
fine.
want some kind of response?
Well,
In deference to Dr. Caldwell, who sits on that board, who I have the utmost confidence in, I agree.
we could,
so is that a friendly amendment?
Yes, I will amend my motion.
okay.
But it needs to be strong.
Oh,
It
yeah,
needs
all
to
the other
be
stuff needs to
pissed
be in there.
off that they're ignoring
yeah.
us and ignoring the community.
Yeah, and I suggest that we send it, return receipt requested,
Certified mail.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a possibility, but just a thought, that maybe council may inquire with the local healthcare district as to the opportunity or option to actually speak to their council and find out, you know, maybe co-coordinate the action that Supervisor McClure was speaking about?
The healthcare district's attorney has delivered to both councils all of the documents.
Okay.
And have been in contact.
Right, but I was just saying that maybe having a discussion with them about our,
Well, the end of the letter
That would
should
be a
read.
good idea. That would be a good idea.
Should request
To
that
coordinate with their
we're eagerly waiting for their response or to enter into discussions with them, not just leave it, here's the letter and have them sign for it.
Right.
Tell them we want to hear back.
so my point was that we, as a board, consider directing staff to direct legal counsel to co-coordinate with the healthcare district's counsel as well.
And file for standing.
Sure.
So, Martha, you and I are both on the 2x2 with the healthcare district. How soon then are we going to need to set up that meeting to get this rolling? You know, with court dates coming up and everything,
I don't
I'm
think we have
concerned.
to have, I don't think we need to do anything with the healthcare district. They're already in. But now what we want to do is get in. We want to file papers that we also
thought they-
determine that we have standing.
Okay, I was misunderstanding.
So I amended my motion.
So do we have a similar motion from the board?
Do I have a
I so move. I guess we,
Yeah, I think we're in tandem here on this.
yeah,
Okay. So do we need two separate votes on that?
I don't
Just,
think so.
I think we probably do.
Nope.
Well, you don't.
Are we giving direction?
You don't exist as a joint body, unlike, say,
So we
the
do need to
solid
vote.
waste
Two votes.
board, where you are a joint
Right.
board. This is two
We need
separate boards.
motions and seconds from both
So
bodies.
do we have a second from the board?
Second.
Oh, we have a second?
but
Okay.
you better have a second from the council, because David.
No,
Donna
Donna
did,
seconded
okay.
it, so.
All right. And so, and you have the motion? It's clear enough? Okay. So could you please poll the county's vote?
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Westfall?
Sorry, you don't have a clerk here.
Oh, we don't?
Councilmember Shalong?
Yes.
Councilmember Holly?
Yes.
Joey's
Mayor
there.
Pro Tem Ania?
Yes.
And Mayor Murray?
Yes, thank you.
Joey, could you pull the board's vote?
Supervisor McNamer,
Yes.
Supervisor McClure,
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan,
Yes.
Chair Sullivan.
Yes. Okay, moving on to.
Can
yeah.
I just make a recommendation really quick for anybody out there listening that will watch this? Dr. Duncan, get your copy machine going, because I want to let everyone know that he does, besides all the information, he also has lists out there, that petitions that you can take around and have people sign. I think the more signatures, the better. I think he told me earlier that we have approximately 1,700, but in a community this size, we should have thousands, because this is important to the entire community. So get out there, each individual, get out there and do your job and help bring support to this issue.
I think it would be worth noting also that those of us that are in Sacramento on a regular basis to have a pretty good conversation with our elected representatives down there to at some point, they're going to probably need to intervene.
You know, just, it's no small irony, I did not tell my daughter, who I was with today, that this was on the agenda. And we were talking about something as we're driving by the hospital. She brought it up and volunteered that she'd had a conversation with her friends and relatives that they were going to perhaps have to move because there wasn't going to be enough room at the hospital anymore. Now, that's out of the mouth of a 13-year-old who is not politically astute. So that's how deep it runs.
Apparently she is, David.
Yeah.
Apparently she is. Guess maybe she listens.
I was going to say, when David's are down.
Yeah, watch out. From the tree. Come 18, you may be looking for somebody in your office there.
That's a gotcha.
So just for clarification, the councils are going to try to file to get in for the September 5th?
Yes, we'll coordinate with the Healthcare Council and making sure that we're all up to speed on what exactly we'll file
And then we will
when and
probably
how.
request an extension?
Probably.
Would that be?
I think our role should be to be as useful as possible to the attorneys that have now, devoted themselves to this over the last few weeks. So we should probably find out from them whether or not they want a continuance. And I think there's a number of ways we can weigh in. Something that I would like to explore is coming in as an amicus curiae friend of the court and presenting briefings and arguments but without necessarily complicating the case by becoming a party, an actual litigant. I don't know that we have that much to add to what the healthcare district is doing, but we'll find out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess we're moving on. Approve the memorandum of understanding between the City of Crescent City and Del Norte County.
Attached to the Board of Supervisors agenda is a short staff report reflecting the limited amount of changes that are in the existing MOU. Essentially, right now, the services would be maintained with a change in the engineering services upon the retirement of the existing city engineer / county engineer. And I had a discussion with Mr. Palazzo earlier today, and there is one minor change that we'd like the board and the council to consider, but maybe a discussion over all of the services at this point needs to be had, or any questions that the council or the board may have. Currently, the building services are the same as they've been, same with code enforcement. The IT services are in place in regards to the tower and the equipment. The general consensus was that the services that are being provided by the city and the county are running relatively well at the staff level, and there haven't been a lot of issues at this point. There were discussions regarding the building inspection services expanding, perhaps to deal with business license inspections in the city limits and how that would look. At this point, those are not addressed because I don't believe we were prepared to completely discuss those inside this MOU, but there are avenues to actually provide that service through the county if a building owner or a business owner or somebody that's prospective to be a business owner requests an inspection on a building. We have a mechanism for that in our fee schedule. So in general terms, from what I can see and what we have discussed, the services would be maintained essentially the same at this point unless there's additional direction by the council and the board. And we would request that on page 8 of the MOU, L, the date that's put in there for the ending of the services for the engineer was November 30th, and we'd like to extend that out to December 28th so that there isn't a lapse in coverage for the county having a licensed surveyor and engineer on staff. The hours may be limited depending on the need at the city at that point, but it would give us an avenue if we had a map to be recorded or some sort of an issue that required the county engineer to stamp something, that we would have that service available.
Any questions from board members?
That's the only amendment is changing. Gene wants to give his, on
go
our
ahead.
city
Yeah,
manager
just-
to give his report.
I'll be, very brief and just concur with Mr. Serena stated. The December date, I think will work, well for both the city and the county. And talking with Mr. Barnes on his future retirement date, which will be probably the first or second week in January. The council did have a discussion on the building services, at our yesterday's evening's meeting. And there are, as I pointed out, some things to work out with an evaluation that, I will, continue to do as staff with, how those services are provided and what the, better options, may be, whether to continue contracting with the county or take that back in-house and contract, or have that provided in-house. So that may be a future discussion that we can address.
So any questions from council?
I just actually have one question, and the only concern that I have has to do with the building inspection services being shared. And I know there's some more discussion that's going to occur after we approve this. When we deal with the terms of the agreement, it looks like it has a finite term, September 1 of 2012 to August 31, 2013, but either party can give a 30-day written notice. If there's a change of any part of this agreement, can we change a part of the agreement without throwing the whole agreement out? Does that make sense? I just want to make sure of that before we go forward.
Well, I think that at any time, the Board of Supervisors and City Council could choose to amend this, and we could take it up as a joint meeting or coordinate it and take it up separately. Hopefully, we'd be on the same page so that whatever's presented at either one of the meetings would be identical.
And maybe it could be just amendment if, okay.
Unless council says otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment. So if we decide in a future meeting that it may be more advantageous for us to have a building inspector, we can do the 30-day notice and just take out that portion, and the rest of the agreement remains in effect, or we can even add to that agreement.
I would hope that before we even got to the 30-day notice, because that's primarily on making, well, essentially ending the agreement in how I read it, but we could coordinate at the staff level and come up with some wording to present to the board and to the council that would be whatever the proposal from either one of the entities would be, and we could work it out through that process.
I agree. That's what I meant. I'm just saying that if we went the whole thing, it can be 30 days. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from supervisors or council people? Any public comment? Wow, no public comment. Bring it back.
What do you want to move to approve the changes as recommended by staff?
Second.
Been moved and seconded.
And I will move the same for the council.
Second.
Joey, can you pull the board, please?
Supervisor McNamara?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes.
Robin, could you please call the vote?
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Holly?
Yes.
Councilmember Shalong?
Yes.
Councilmember Westfall?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ania?
Yes.
And Mayor Murray.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Item number 4 is discuss and take action regarding appointment of staff and a member of the Board of Supervisors regarding a potential social host ordinance. And I don't know if we have a staff report on that.
Jay, do you want to?
I believe the City Council and the Board of Supervisors have both received a presentation by Health and Human Services and the teenagers that are involved, and I believe it's Friday Night Live. And they are asking for the formation of a committee between the members of the council, the board, legal counsel, and also the city manager and myself to meet and look at the possibility of having a social host ordinance that would put restrictions and penalties on providing alcohol to minors in both the city and the county, and have it very well coordinated so that in the instances of any parties that happen where there is underage drinking and alcohol has been provided to those children, that be consistent. And the part of the discussion was that the county has a lot more area, which means a lot more room to have parties. And that was essentially what they said, was that they felt
We got a
that
bigger party area.
we have a lot more acreage, let's put it that way. So
You guys are just more fun.
the knowledge of the children, or the teenagers that were there, had indicated that most of the parties do happen within the county, and they would like to see that addressed in some form, and the social host ordinance was the avenue that they'd like to see it addressed in.
Does the city have one in place?
No, we don't. And we haven't had any reported incidents of it, but I think it would be a good thing for us to have as a tool and to be in alignment with the county. So I attended the Friday Night Live Town Hall meeting. I can't remember when that was. Dr. Blacknick's here, and it was earlier this year, and that was the consensus of all of the people that attended, the youth and the parents that were there. So they're very concerned about it, and without having a resource officer at the school now, we're not going to be able to do every 15 minutes for the kids anymore with drinking and driving. So this would at least be a tool and bring public awareness to the matter, and let parents and adults know that there's consequences when they provide alcohol to the youth in our community.
I do believe, I spoke with the kids before they put these together. They just let me know what they were working on. And the devil is in the details. It's really going to have to be structured where there's no gray area. And I think this is a good idea, but it could be a can of worms if it's not set up right. So.
I'd like to comment. Did I hear you say that they want a joint meeting with the attorneys, or can we do that separately in our own bodies?
They had requested a committee be formed to discuss this.
You know, where I worked in Contra Costa County, we had a party ordinance. We called it a party ordinance, the same thing. Contra Costa County has one. City of Clayton, where I worked, has one. I don't know that we have to have a committee. We can use those. And what we did was, people were fined. And the fine, it was an administrative hearing. And the fines were hefty, $500 on first offense when parents were not home or supplying alcohol to minors. It not only was people supplying, but it was going to a loud party and no adults are present. The parents of who owned that home, their child, were fined for that. And that was a strict ordinance. It worked well. We used it maybe 2 times in 5 years, had no more parties like that. I guess they went to the county in Contra Costa because they passed their ordinance a couple years after ours. But there are samples. There are
volunteer from the council, it sounds like, to sit on that committee.
I wouldn't mind volunteering, but it doesn't seem like it would take a lot of work because there are samples. Other counties and cities have them.
Rich,
And they work well.
I agree. It probably doesn't take a lot of work, but I think the kids want it, and I see the value of having that committee because we need buy-in from the sheriff as well as the city.
I agree.
So
Yeah. I was just going to say the
I'll let
same
the mayor handle
thing.
you as the appointee, and Leslie, I think you had some suggestions when
Thank
you
you,
ran the
Richard.
last meeting as well.
You're welcome.
I'm never speaking up again.
Excellent select.
And
I'd be
I
happy.
wouldn't mind signing that
I
ordinance.
would
I'll
too.
have it to you in a day.
Yeah.
I'll change the name.
I'll be happy to sit on that committee with council member Ania, but I do, and I've seen sample ordinances.
The most.
But I do think we need a little more work than what you're making it sound like.
I just didn't mean we don't need a joint city council committee, a full committee. It's a
Oh, no.
smaller committee would be
No,
fine.
I think they just wanted
Right.
one from each
That's
body
fine.
and with a few of them.
And what makes that ordinance, and what makes that ordinance work is that our administrative hearing officer agrees that if the person, if it did happen, that the family gets that full effect of the fine. Because in communities like ours here, that'll spread like wildfire. And none of the kids will want to have a party at their home because of the fines it's going to inflict on their parents.
And it would also cancel their home insurance
Yes.
policy. So
There's all kinds of
yeah,
repercussions, and it just has to work. It just has to be enforced.
Okay, well, we got that started. Good.
so.
Any other comments from supervisors or council people?
Nope.
Public comment? Okay, moving on.
So that was a directive to staff too, to help us get this drafted. Okay.
You guys love these joint meetings.
This is another thing, item number 5, this is discussion regarding healthy communities, and the city council hosted the Redwood Empire Division of the California League of Cities July 13th, and we heard a campaign about healthy communities, and I thought it would be better for us to do as we are doing with the social host ordinance, to include the whole county so that it's not just dropped off at the end of the city limits for a campaign like this. And we have a sample resolution from Arcata that I thought would be helpful as a tool to get going on this if the council and the board of supervisors agreed to this. So, Gene, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I do not, I provided some brief discussion on the HEAL program, and the League of California Cities is one of their priorities to have cities and counties adopt this ordinance, and a lot of things that we're doing in the county, Rethink Your Drink, even probably the social host ordinance, they kind of tie in with that healthy community.
Gene, can you actually talk into the
mic?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes, thanks.
Okay.
We're already doing a lot of it, you're saying, and we have.
We're already doing a lot of the healthy communities programs with Rethink Your Drink that's been presented to the council,
you know,
Farmers
the-
market,
the
community
farmers
gardens.
market, the
We think
the
you're
community, you know, so there's a lot going on already, but I think this brings us all together.
And I was just going to say that when we had that presentation, I was literally disgusted by the statistics of the marketing to young kids for unhealthy and, sugar, heavily sedated sugar drinks and things like that. And I thought that,
Heavily sedated?
yeah.
That's.
I thought that it would be another point of discussion for us that anytime that we have control over an event that we encourage, for instance, I was thinking at our pool, when the kids go to the pool, what they can buy are sodas and candy bars, and instead I thought maybe we might do waters and sugar-free juices and string cheese and granola bars and fruit, things like that for the kids. And I just thought that was one thing that the city could do.
I think that's a great conversation, and maybe this is the beginning before you get punitive, like I think the city of Richmond is going to introduce a tax on soda. And before you go that far, I think to work with the groups like First Five or the Family Resource Center, Rethink Your Drink, some of the things you're talking about, where the city has control of the eatery at the pool, and we work with the school district, and work on these sort of things and get a culture of health going. And an ordinance, maybe you want this one, maybe you want to tweak this to make it more personalized, but I'm all for it.
Director Blatnick,
Yeah,
Gary,
it does,
Gary, you
and
had something you
looking
wanted to add
through
to?
I think you've already basically said it, that this community has done a lot of work in the areas of building a healthy community, and I think that this would just validate all that work and encourage some great creative ideas for the future. So I think it's wonderful, and I'd be happy to take a look at it and see if we want to tweak a little bit to make it more appropriate for local use, but I think it's a great idea.
I have a comment. This starts at home. How much are we educating the parents of these kids? How much are these parents shoving their kids out the door to go play kickball in the streets like we did when we were little, instead of sitting in front of computers and laptops and tablets for 4 and 5 and 6 hours a night? I don't know how we stop that. How do you address that with it? Those things have become babysitters for the parents. They don't have to worry about where they're at. They know they're in their bedroom or in the living room playing on these. Now, I play on mine too, but
And your Angry Birds.
I've done all the Angry Birds, they're done. But I don't know how much more we can do, Gary, if there's programs out there for educating the parents. It's got to start at home. We can't just put healthy foods in vending machines and hope the kids buy from those instead of going down the street to the store and buying what they really want.
And there's a really great PowerPoint that we were presented on this, so I would encourage that Mr. Palazzo get that to the county for review.
And we do have California Endowment here sponsoring healthy activities, and they're going to branch out in the Building Healthy Communities to go into the different neighborhoods like Cindy Henderson did with disaster preparedness, and have group leaders in Klamath and Gasky, Hyuchi, Smith River. So they're working on that too. So we're just,
Good.
and so I think that if we all just pull together and heighten the awareness by joining forces, that we will build a healthier community.
I think one of the other things that does, besides the behavior modification, you've got to have the infrastructure in place for a lot of these kids to do it. And due to the sheer amount of rain, I think each of these subcommunities, communities that make up Delaware County, they need the facilities to be able to do that. I know California Endowment's been involved with the Smith River Gymnasium, and I think that's going to be a really good thing. And the CAO, Mr. Serena, and I had a meeting with a group of ladies out in Smith River that are in the process of trying to organize an after-school activity. So, but the facility was there, whereas Smith River Baptist Church has stepped forward in trying to coordinate that. So, I think some of those structural, permanent deals will help out a lot to behavior modifications. So,
Yep. Supervisor, I agree, and I agree with what Leslie had to say about the families. But as policymakers, I do think it's an opportunity for the policymakers to invoke a policy of encouragement and direction towards healthy behavior, and I would ask that staff be directed with Dr. Blatnick to craft such something and bring it back to the Board of Supervisors, yeah.
Okay.
Is the council in agreement with that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I am too, but I just want to make sure that when we do this, we're also educating organizations that finance their activities on the backs of the sales of the candy and the soda at the baseball game, at the football game, at the soccer games, that we have to help them figure ways to
Wrestling matches.
deal with that revenue. Because that's really important, because
Well, it's a cultural change. How would you feel if you were at Little League and the only thing you could buy would be Red Bull? How long would it take the parents to say, well, something's going on here that might not be right?
Right.
So,
No, I mean, I think that we just want to bring them on.
right,
We
I
want to
agree.
make sure that we're talking to them about what's happening.
Oh, it's
So
a
all of
cultural
sudden,
change.
It's just not
Yeah.
in your face, you're doing the wrong thing. It needs to be more,
Well, I think an ordinance of encouragement.
yes.
Okay. Yes. Oh, yeah, Donna?
Yeah, there's just, we have 11 grandchildren, and 9 of those don't have television. So for those of the kids that use laptops or TV as babysitters, there's a really easy solution. You unplug it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll move on to item 6, discuss setting semi-annual meeting dates for joint city-county meetings. We've gone through periods of time between the board and the city council where we've had gaps of time where we don't get together to discuss common issues. And what the mayor and I had discussed is not setting a specific date, but putting more a seasonal date, meeting twice a year to discuss. And it could be, we'll try and make, this is going to be, just come out wrong, probably make it a brief meeting. But if it's not anything, I just think the point of setting some kind of structure to it so we don't go a year or two without meeting, it's just too small of a community without both boards on the same page. And I'm sure Supervisor McClure and Supervisor Finnegan, you've both been on the board long enough to know back to the days where there wasn't that cooperation. And so I think where we're at right now, we need to continue to build on that. And if we put it kind of structure in consensus of that we want to meet twice a year, I think that at least puts something semi-stone, so to speak,
So is
semi-stone.
this fall or is this summer?
Set in stone.
I
We could call
I would recommend that one of those meetings be early enough that if budget considerations need to be taken into consideration, that we have plenty of time to do that.
Yeah,
Good
February.
call.
February?
How does that work with budget, Jay? Budget issues, and is that early enough?
Yeah, for our purposes, we begin the process in mid-April, so February, March would work.
So February being one of the dates, and then August or September being the other date, the other month?
Sounds good.
September? Okay.
The reason for this meeting is because of the MOU and it was strictly.
I know,
on the
but
time
it's
of the
great
MOU.
to have this meeting because we get to put this on the agenda and we can actually discuss it as both boards, so.
February and August?
February and August.
Okay.
Any, that's kind of consensus of the board and the city? Okay. All right. The other item 7 on the agenda is hold a discussion regarding countywide business license, take action as necessary. The mayor had asked me to put this on the agenda.
I knew it had to be a city person.
Well, and I think, Madam Mayor, if you.
Okay. The reason I thought it might be helpful as a tool is I know that Jay mentioned that you wouldn't be making any money off of it, but it could be an economic development tool in terms of knowing how many businesses are in the county, where they are, what kind of businesses they are, and that would also open the door for making sure that their health and safety codes are up to standard. So I thought it might be a useful tool. We have it in the city, and a lot of city people are not happy that we have business licenses, but you don't necessarily have to charge in the county, but it might be a useful economic tool. So was my line of thinking, that so that we could be in more alignment. And I think you said something about.
Well, one of the issues that came up, and we dealt with it 3 or 4 years ago, is medical dispensaries. And one of the tools to make sure these things don't pop up right next to schools and other family areas was to have a business license.
We
And,
have ordinances for that.
you know, anyway, that was one of the things well, it up until recently, I hadn't really stopped that, though.
Nobody did.
So it was just an idea, and just for a tool, so you can laugh about it if you want. I know you've tried it before, and there was a lot of resistance, so, you know, I'm just bringing it up because it might be a useful tool.
Well, it seems to me we didn't just try it before. We did have business licenses for the county before.
Yeah, at one
And
point.
I remember the big mess with trying to pay everybody back and all that. I want to know why it didn't work at that time.
Well, I'll do a little research because that was before my time. I do remember it going into effect and being rescinded about 30 days later. I remember that
After
part.
we collected
Was it an
money.
election year?
I worked at the tax collector's office at that time, and I can remember.
I've
It
heard.
was kind of a fiasco, getting people's money back. Some people didn't get their money
Yeah.
back. It was,
I've heard it had something to do with pitchforks and torches.
with what?
Pitchforks and torches.
Well, there's another alternative.
Supervisor Eller informed me at one point in time that he was the leader of the group to get it rescinded. And that led indirectly to his eventually getting on the Board of Supervisors.
Do we have anybody on this board that owns a business in the county?
I do.
Oh,
Since you're talking about pitchforks and torches, I mean, another way you could do it very easily is if you had a city and a county that were consolidated and there was a city business license,
I
the
knew
county
that
would
was coming
automatically
up.
be included.
me too.
The county want to join the city, is that what you're saying?
For me, I'm
You
not
bet.
ready.
You bet.
I'm not ready to do a county business license, especially in these trying times with our staff being stretched really thin. So the only way we could implement it would have to be through charging. So we could then have to charge for a business, and then I look on the other side that businesses are struggling, so I really don't think it's time to consider. I also think that a lot of the county businesses are like one-person businesses where they, you know, they're smaller. There are a lot of big businesses that are in the county, but for me, I'm not comfortable doing that. I think that we have had economic analysis of what kind of businesses there are in the community, and we do have, I think, a pulse on that kind of thing. So I'm not sure we really. I would prefer that the county not consider a business license at this time.
Maybe instead you could start a corporate tax.
Okay.
We have that. It's called sales tax.
That was a joke.
Is there any public comment on this? Okay, so we'll move on to item number 8, receive an update on the Oversight Board to the successor agency to the redevelopment agency of the city of Crescent City.
Can you say that 3 times?
I sound like an auctioneer. I'm Mr. Plotso.
Yeah, Mayor and members of council, members of the board, our finance director, Ken McDonald, will give a brief update on this that was been requested. It's been discussed at the city council level several occasions, and then at the successor or oversight board. So, Mr. McDonald.
Hi, I'm Ken McDonald, I'm the Finance Director with the city. This item is directly related to the next one, which is an updated review of the SERAF, which is the Supplemental Educational.
That got on the agenda by mistake, so I've just been following the county's agenda.
What had happened was because of the recent legislation that was signed in AB 1484, it created a new form and also had a form to revise or show the actual to the estimated on the very first what was called ROPS, Recognized Obligation Payment Schedule. That one just came out. We've got some more recent updated information. This wonderful legislation took what the redevelopment agency...
Are we on this document or the...
Yeah. That item there caused what was going to be the redevelopment agency dissolved in 4 years to have this redevelopment agency dissolved in possibly 20 years if we get a 4% growth in property tax. What had originally been proposed to the successor agency and the oversight board was a cash flow table 1 and table 2, showing where those revenues came from. The big change since this AB 1484 came out changed table 2, which in effect the water fund, the water loan that the water utility fund had loaned to the redevelopment agency, that balance has increased by $67,000. It was a little under the 1.27 million. Now it's, or it was about 1.2 million. Now it's 1.27 million. Showing those payments there, you'll also note one of the things that's a little confusing with this too is it shows the total payments going to the water fund loan, but a portion of that on this last section, the 386,000, will be will not go to pay the water fund loan, but will go back to fund what is the low and moderately low income housing set aside fund that through this AB 1484 will be transferring all available funds that we have in that fund right now to the state sometime in November.
Madam Mayor, can I ask that instead of discussing the numbers, because it's hard enough for our council to understand the details, let alone this Board of Supervisors, since they have not been involved in the process.
Oh, some have.
Yeah.
Okay.
David has.
To instead just give like an executive summary of how this process is going to affect the city and the county.
Not very well. This is this legislation was supposed to fix the previous legislation that was out. My prediction is they'll have to come up with a future fix when the legislature reconvenes. These items will be presented to the Oversight Board next Wednesday at our meeting there. We have to provide this information to the Department of Finance by September 1st. Once we do that, the Department of Finance can begin proceedings on a finding of completion that we have to get before we can have any loans repaid. The soonest that those can be started will be next year, or in 2013-14 fiscal year. So it's caused a delay. The redevelopment agency was proposed in the beginning to be eliminated and all loans paid off in 5 years. Now it's unlikely they'll be paid off in 20 years, and that's pending if we have a 4% growth. Any more kind of summary on this is PhD level material, and I'm still a little below that.
Maybe I can, add some clarity to it as well. This whole AB 1484 basically restarted, or you kind of go back, it changed. It was a whole game changer in how we're winding down redevelopment agencies in the state of California. What it has done is taken all of the property tax increment or the property tax that's being collected and distributing all of that to all of the taxing entities. And there's a chart in here on page 2 of the staff report that identifies the taxing entities within Del Norte County. The growth of the future property taxes based on the date of this, it's kind of like starting redevelopment over. That growth that will happen within the project area going into the future will be redistributed to pay off existing debt that the agency has. And that existing debt is what Mr. McDonald was talking about, is our loans that we borrowed from our water fund to do the municipal swimming pool and other projects within the project area. We are predicting that growth rate, and probably 4% over the life of the rest of the agency, that may happen. It's not 4%. It's not going to happen in the next few years here. But if that does happen, it'll take at least 20 years to wind down and pay off those debts that the agency has for the water funds. It is kind of interesting because part of this whole winding down process, there's another fund out there which is called our Housing Set-Aside Funds. The agency had cash assets in that of about $900,000. I don't have the exact amount. That will be redistributed also to the taxing entities. But 20% of that growth that's going to happen, that's supposed to pay off our water funds, will also be redistributed to start a new housing fund. And so that housing fund will start being collected again. And that intent is to go to low, moderate, affordable housing within our community. So it's a whole new ballgame. And we're all trying to figure out the process. We're working with the auditor controller, our finance people. We have some special consultants to try and walk us through this whole process, the whole state. You know, it's new to everybody in the state. Department of Finance, everything we do is reported. It goes from the successor agency to the oversight board. The oversight board's decisions go to the Department of Finance. They get that approved. They send that back. So it's a whole layering process that we're going through, you know, to do this wind down. Our hope is to get through this initial phase, and then, you know, hopefully, you know, the next 20 years we'll be meeting as an oversight board probably a couple times a year, just to make sure that, you know, we're adopting our ROPS, our recognized obligation payment schedule, and, you know, things are just, you know, kind of moving forward. So kind of that's in the big picture of 1484 and where we're at.
Yeah, and the ROPS are due semi-annually, so
Correct.
that's why we would do that. Any questions for Mr. Palazzo?
Just a few observations. So our property taxes have gone down by 1/3 to 1/2, and they're saying that we're going to have a 4% growth over the next 20 years. So now we have all that to make up, and then they think that we're going to get enough, and that we're not going to lose more people, especially with the hospital situation being what it is. So my question is that should none of this happen, what are the options to the city and the county?
Well, the existing property tax, you know, that's being collected, you know, is still going to get redistributed to the taxing entities. The impact is on the city, and, you know, the loan that the agency did, you know, from our water fund to do, you know, a project that benefits actually the entire county, which is the pool. You know, that loan gets paid off at a slower rate. If the agency lapses and we're done, you know, then the loan doesn't get paid off. You know, there'll be, you know, that outstanding debt that, you know, the water fund will never recognize.
The concern that I have is that, in turn, the city will have to raise water rates to adjust for that loss.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
Can I ask Clint a few questions?
Absolutely.
He's not here for that.
Our auditor.
Yeah, no, he's not here for that. Huh? Will you tell me the story of what is the benefit for the county, the Harbor District, Healthcare District, Library District, Del Norte County Unified? Tell me what you're feeling, what your take is on this.
On the benefit to those organizations? Well, the benefit will come in any residual balance left in that tax fund. So currently we have pass-through agreements with all those agencies, and those continue as status quo. After we do our pass-through payments, there's a lump sum of money left over that gets used to either pay the ROPS, our OPS schedule. Anything not on that schedule, then gets dispersed to those agencies. It doesn't help the school district. I believe the term is
Right, because it's just like
revenue, yeah.
revenue neutral.
Right, so that any money that would go to the school district, all that would do is offset what the state backfills them for.
And are we forced to give it to the school district?
Yeah.
Could the school district give it to the pool for swimming lessons before they receive it?
I don't know what the school district can do on their end. I know that we have to return that to all the taxing entities, and since they are actually cut out of that loop of property tax, because it goes to the former RDA, you give that back to them.
So I was just trying to think of a way that some of it could bounce back to that water loan.
Yeah, and
Right.
City manager is absolutely correct, so is Mr. McDonald. The way they did 1484, it takes any payments going to the water fund loan, in our case, and 20% of that goes back to the low moderate income housing fund. So it's inherent in itself, the city's going to lose out on $389,000 if things stay the same. It's not a benefit to the city whatsoever.
And is there any way that we can help assist the city in not being hit so hard?
Through this process? No.
You got to sort of understand how we got here, and it wasn't just us.
Oh, I know, but I just know that they're going to suffer.
Well, and I do think there may be some legislative push to amend 1484, because it doesn't seem, life's not fair, but it doesn't seem fair that you can have a loan, and if the Department of Finance agrees to pay back that loan, or you're able to pay back that loan, for them to come in and take 20% off the top. I think it either should be a full payback or no payback. But again, the Department of Finance is the governing body overseeing all these actions, and they're the ones that are the final say in approving any payments.
I'm sure it'll be a topic of discussion at the California League of Cities meeting at the beginning of September, so we'll bring back all the scuttlebutt on any amendments to 1484 for the community. Hopefully we'll hear some good news, but so far it's gotten from bad to worse.
Yeah, I definitely think the whole process affects our city here dramatically.
Any other questions? We just wanted an update because David's the only representative on the Oversight Committee, and we wanted to update the rest of the Board of Supervisors.
Well, I've been telling the Board of Supervisors what's going on, and it's always nice to get the League of Cities' point of view on redevelopment agency and for the rest of the board, if you didn't think they were getting that. We've all been getting along pretty well here tonight, so I'm not going to go into the negativity of why we got to where we're at. Suffice it to say that, you know, our redevelopment agency, that was actually the city council, I guess the redevelopment agency, was managed in somewhat the same way as a lot of this other redevelopment agencies throughout the state that's being championed by the League of Cities. And redevelopment monies were the increase in tax above the baseline that was supposed to be redirected back for economic development. And that's where the argument starts. Is economic development government loaning government itself money? That wasn't the intent. And therein is why the door was open and this governor decided to try to correct that ill. And the bottom line is what people need to start looking forward to rather than, and it's hard not to focus on who's getting hurt, but is what the solution is. What is the solution for the next way we structure low-income housing? What is the solution for how governments, whether through tax increments or not, use it to the benefit of economic development for the private sector for what it was intended? So that's the real challenge, is how do we go forward, we're focusing on the punishment of the ills. Let's start looking forward to how do we correct, how do we implement, how do we start, how do we create something that had the same intent that redevelopment agencies were supposed to be doing all over these years. And that's the discussion I'd like to see in the future. But I'll keep you well informed of where we're going. Unfortunately, it's like Lombard Street, you know, and it keeps changing, so.
You know, if I may say something, as far as our city goes, I see economic development with the redevelopment loan that we gave Mr. Faring that fixed the buildings there with the S-curve where the hole was in the building for years and years and years, the old Avos property that now has businesses in it, the building across from Denny's, the Foursquare lumber building, economic development. Many cities misuse their money building golf courses, but I don't think cities that use their money correctly should be penalized, and that's what the state does. They just have one rule that affects everyone. We used our money correctly. Now, you can argue whether economic development was good for our pool or not, but I can tell you that people use that pool. It benefits the whole community, and I don't know how to measure economic development like that. It's a business. The city runs it and loses $200,000 plus a year. But I think overall, we've used our money correctly, especially our housing, with our housing set-aside funds. It's just sad that sometimes the state passes a law that affects everyone and doesn't affect, and shouldn't. It shouldn't affect everyone, especially those that are doing it right, doing it correctly. I look for changes in these laws because they've really hurt a lot of cities, and it needs to be changed. But I agree with Supervisor Finnegan. They have to come up with a new way to make sure that it's used correctly by every city.
Well, I do think they're not going after some of the agencies' issues they need to go after at the state level. I mean, there's a whole bunch of agencies that have not taken a cut. And unfortunately, education and realignment stuff is kicked up front, so. Okay.
Does anyone have any recommendations for our next joint meeting? For February? Yeah. It's on the agenda.
And I think, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I think we've already made notes of several things that we wanted to have brought back for further discussion, so we've got to start.
In the past, we've discussed working together more so in the recreation field. And I think that as we talk about healthy communities and more for our kids to do, that maybe we consider some kind of joint recreation department that would handle all of our current recreation and then expand so that all of our outlying communities as well as the city are providing opportunities for our kids.
I agree. We'd like some help.
You know, I agree with that also. You know, I was looking forward to hope.
You know, I mean, the pool, we could use help with the pool too. I mean, it's everything for our kids.
I really thought that we would be able to get that recreation grant for the ball fields behind Safeway. It's really disheartening to find out that we lose that grant to Marin County. And as I understand it, we're going to apply for another one. We're going to apply for another one, and hopefully if we get that, would be the perfect time to discuss doing a joint venture with recreation, with softball, with soccer, with Little League, and all the things together. I think that should be up and coming, and putting all of our recreational resources between the county and the city into one.
Well, so maybe, I mean, we are talking a long ways off, but obviously there's some issues that can be brought up that are ongoing issues that can be, and I know our CEO sent an email out to each of the board members to see if they had ideas for this particular agenda. But right now would be a great opportunity if there's, you know, obviously we can hold a meeting before February if there's something more urgent that comes up, but recreation would be a good topic to put on the agenda for that meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to see the harbor come and give us an update on what's happening down there. They could do it all at once.
And just to also talk a little more about what the city is doing, we just received a substantial grant to upgrade our RV park, about $700,000. $779,000. Yeah, and so that's going to be about a 2-year project. So I think that's going to be a nice addition. And then also we just had our first beachfront master planning public meeting, and it went very well. I think we had about 50 community members come join us and give us input, and that will flow into the plan for the reconstruction of Front Street. So, you know, maybe if the board is interested in seeing what that's going to look like, by February we may have the plan.
That would be great. Yeah.
So with that, I'll adjourn the city council meeting.
We'll adjourn the board of supervisors.